I want to thank you. We've exceeded 2 million combined views, which is astounding to me. This channel has always been a hobby. Right now, I have a break. I got a big trial that's starting. Could be 6 weeks plus. Not able to find a courtroom yet to land. Now, remember, guys, I gave you my list of some of the most useless words in the English language. It's an adjective. Good for it. Means very good and very fine. Ilogo fusio u hippo cunario. Whatever the hell it is. Elogo fusio u hippo cunarius. So after making love, the wife turned to her husband and said, "You were so elo go fusio hippo cunarius." The topic today is sovereign citizens, and how are they going to address the fact that the FBI has already declared them to be domestic terrorist groups? We've already seen what Trump did with foreign designated terrorists. This is not a good time to be a sovereign citizen. So here is the FBI from 2010 talking about the sovereign citizens being a domestic terrorist organization. They reside in the country, they're separate or sovereign from the US. They don't believe they have to answer to the government for anything, including taxes. This causes all kinds of problems and crimes. They don't pay their taxes. They hold illegal courts that issue warrants for judges and police officers. They clog up the court system with frivolous lawsuits and liens. This will be what we'll see in an executive order from Trump. Just give it time, and I think this is going to happen. So here it is. They talked about, some of the things they did and how they got busted. And then here's New Jersey's Office of Homeland Security, and they consider the sovereign citizens to be a domestic threat. Here it is, sovereign citizen extremists. And once again, they are not subject to questioning or arrest, paying taxes, likely operate individually within small groups, engage in financial schemes, attempt to illegally acquire private property. Then the Moors, there we go. It's a moderate threat. So that's something that makes them visible, puts them on the radar. Then in 2011, they were once again considered a growing domestic threat to law enforcement by the FBI. And the FBI considers sovereign citizen extremists a domestic terrorist movement scattered across the United States, exists for decades. Well-known members such as Terry Nichols, who planned the Oklahoma City, Oklahoma bombing. Sovereign citizens do not represent an anarchist group, nor are they a militia, though they sometimes use or buy illegal weapons. They were talking about how guns are really kind of secondary to them, but they're more of an ideology where they just don't think that they have to listen to the government at all. And then a voluminous influx of documents that clog the courts. That's also a form of paper terrorism that they're known for. Now, in order to get to that vaunted description of domestic terrorists, there has to be force, threat of force, some illegal activity that goes with it that's criminal. Here are some indicators. They make references to the Bible. Well, I do that quite a lot. Constitution of the United States, I do that too. U.S. Supreme Court decisions and treaties with foreign governments. Not so much the treaties with foreign governments. I admit I'm very rusty in that because I don't give a shit. But Supreme Court decisions, yeah, I did study a year of that. So far I'm in trouble. I definitely meet the first test. So should I be worried? No. Personal names spelled in all capital letters or interspersed with colons. It's really a bad thing when your name is interspersed with a colon, because a colon, is an internal organ, and it's used for kind of a very important process, absorbing water so that you don't get dehydrated, but it ultimately functions as the human sewer. So if your name is spelled in capital letters interspersed with colons, that is a bad thing. That might in and of itself warrant your jailing. I certainly don't want to be around a person who does that. To the extent they mean this, Smith John, I have to admit that was really funny, maybe ironically so, because remember I did that video on the overlord king sovereign of Hawaii. He said he paid off the national debt and that the U.S. government couldn't survive without him. I mean, he was hilarious. Just his comedy routine from acting like he did all these things, that he was his own country. I mean, I don't know. I would give a guy like that a pass. Filming interactions with law enforcement. Ooh, wait a minute. That they later post on the internet. Uh-oh. How many of you have done that? I've done that one. I didn't film it though. I'm just broadcasting it. They convene their own special courts that issue fake but realistic looking indictments. I don't do that stuff. They also can use real government documents in an attempt to damage the credit or financial histories. I don't do that. So citations to authority. Unusual word, bibliophobia, a noun. Phobia, of course, means fear, and the Greek word phobia, and in bibli, which means books. A person who strongly dislikes books. Now I'm going to use it in an incorrect way. Quote, my baby refuses to wear his bib. I think he's suffering from bibliophobia. Or, a writer refused to cite to his sources of material, and his refusal to include a bibliography is likely due to bibliophobia. But look at here. The sovereign citizen danger to law enforcement. I looked up that article. It cures insomnia. As you can probably glean from all of this, it's very much anti-sovereign citizen. Well, now here's when Trump took office with his executive order, unlawful organization and the whole thing. And what did they do after they signed this executive order? They brought the full brunt of the U.S. law enforcement on them, which will include the military too. The FBI, unsurprisingly, issued a bulletin just a few years ago about what it is to how they define a domestic terrorist. And of course, like I said, there's a law here involving acts dangerous to human life that are a violation of the criminal laws, appearing to be intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, influence the policy of government by intimidation or coercion, or affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping, and occurring primarily within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. So this is not a charging statute. It's more of a beginning point for the thought process here. And the anti-government or anti-authority violent extremism, this threat encompasses the potential and lawful use of or threat of force or violence in furtherance of ideological agendas derived from anti-government or anti-authority sentiment, including opposition to perceived economic, social, or racial hierarchies, or perceived government overreach, negligence, or illegitimacy. So here it is. This, to me, is where the attack against them is going to come. If they identify as sovereign citizens at a traffic stop with a fake license plate and fake driver's license, I would expect now that the prosecutions are going to go on those probably at a more successful rate than just simply letting them plead guilty. I think they're going to be looking at jail time. But for those who actually want to go further than that, just simply, I think that their attitude is that they can just simply affect government policy, and they get vocal about it, and the government then perceives it as a threat. Let's say you have a dispute about whether or not you think it's really a threat. The major problem you're going to face is you're going to have all the resources of the United States government looking to put you away, and they can hit you up with a boatload of charges. So it remains to be seen, but with Trump in office and the threat on national security, we got to just keep our eyes open that maybe the sovereign citizens are going to be actually prosecuted with some of them as simply domestic terrorist groups. It's one thing to find out how adherent you are to the ideology when you could be facing life in prison. So that's it. Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. Scrupulous is one of my favorite words, an adjective, sick from excessive indulgence in liquor, intemperance in eating and drinking. Quote, used properly. After drinking 4 bottles of Jack Daniels and eating 5 dozen eggs in one sitting, Isaiah experienced massive crapulous and then ran to the toilet. Fartlek's another new word that I discovered. It's when a sprinter or runner is changing speeds from running to sprinting. So I use it in a sentence, correctly, I might add. That runner began to fartlek halfway through the race at an increasing rate. The other runners behind him were all affected, quit the race, and treated for nausea. Well, here's a word that can get you in trouble real quick, and the word is masticate. It's a verb. It's the act of chewing on food. And so I use it in a sentence improperly to throw the connotation off. Quote, we told that man that he cannot eat food in this area, and he responded by openly masticating in front of everyone. Another very strange word that can go with masticate is absquatulate, another verb. The ate is the action, that's what makes it a verb. It's leaving suddenly. Once that man stopped masculating, he suddenly I'm going to try that again. Once that man stopped masticating, he suddenly absquatulated. Hey, I'm not going to be able to do this, guys. I'm going to try this again. Once that man stopped masticating, he suddenly absquatulated. It was so vile and rude. Now, this is an interesting word, cocoraphiaphobia. I'll try that again. Cocoraphiaphobia. Cocoraphiaphobia, a noun. Abnormal fear of failure. So I thought I would use it in a sentence. When that man tried to correctly pronounce the word cocoraphiaphobia, he experienced a sudden bout of cocoraphiaphobia.